Hi folks, my name is Jim O'Donnell and welcome to the third installment of my video series where I share with you my passion for business continuity, especially as it relates to SAP's HANA in-memory compute platform. Today we'll be having fun with HANA system replication, which allows a primary HANA installation to replicate its data in real time to a secondary installation. In the event of a disruption, the secondary can be engaged to restore service very quickly with minimal or even zero downtime. Today, I'll be teaching you how to configure HANA system replication, how to kick off an initial replication and monitor its progress, and finally, how to perform a takeover so that you can see what happens when a system actually kicks over to the secondary. We'll cover all this material in about 15 minutes, and we'll be using some simple included tools such as HDB NSUtil, the command line utility for managing system replication, SAP Control, which controls the services from the command line, and of course, HANA Studio. For this demo, I'm using two separate multi-node HANA clusters. Each cluster has 3 half-terabyte worker nodes. Site 1 in the top light green panel also has a standby node. Site 2 in the bottom black panel does not. I'm using HDB NSUtil to report on the system replication status of both sites. The utility's SR state option reports this status as none, indicating that no replication mode has been defined for either cluster. We can verify this in the HANA Studio Management Console. Let's switch over to HANA Studio now and tidy up a bit, and then I'll log into a fresh session on Site 2. Let's open the Management Console, switch to the Landscape view, and choose the System Replication sub-tab where we can clearly see no system replication has been defined for this cluster. While we're at it, let's examine the Services sub-tab. We see here very little data on the index server for Site 2 because it's basically a fresh install. Now if we head over to the Services sub-tab on Site 1, we get a very different story. Site 1 is loaded with almost 200 gigs of data, which is about 25 to 30% of its recommended storage utilization. And now we'll just switch over to the System Replication tab for Site 1, refresh, and show that it too has no topology defined for system replication. With the preliminaries out of the way, now what does it take to actually set up and start replication? There are 3 steps. First, we enable system replication on the primary system. Services must be started on this system. Second, we're going to register the secondary system, and services must be stopped on the secondary when this happens. Finally, we'll start the replication by restarting services on the secondary system. Let's get to it. I'm going to start in my Site 1 session, and I'm going to run HDB NSUtil with the SR enable option. And I've kicked off this demo with a typo. Chalk it up to nervous jitters. Now I'll reissue the SR enable command, this time with the name parameter, which says you are now the primary site, and the name of your site within this topology is Site 1. And that looks much better. We have successfully enabled system replication for our primary site. Now we're going to move on to Site 2, which we will register as our secondary site. Registration is going to accomplish a few things. First, it's going to put the database into secondary mode. Second, it's going to register it with Site 1 as part of the topology for replication for that cluster. And third, it's going to establish the replication mode for the secondary system. And in this case, we're going to choose asynchronous. This is done with the HDB NSUtil, and the SR register option requires several parameters. First, I have to specify a name for the secondary site. I must specify the host name of the primary site, the instance number of the database we want to replicate, and lastly, the replication mode. I'll choose async. Now, as you can see, the system does a check, and this registration failed because the system services are still running. As I mentioned earlier, all services on the secondary server must be stopped for registration, and the name server on the primary must be running. Not a problem. We'll simply stop the services using SAP Control, and then we'll check the services with HDB to make sure that they've stopped. It looks like they have, so we're good to go. I'll back up a couple commands and replay the registration we sent before, and we should see a much more positive result. And there we go. Not much fanfare, but the single word "done" tells us that our registration was successful. Now I'll go to Site 1 and rerun our SR state report, and in there you'll see that the mappings between nodes for replication have been created. When I run it on Site 2, you'll see that the mappings are not yet there because it hasn't been started and contacted the primary name server to pick those up. But the mode is asynchronous replication, the site ID and site name have been defined. All that's left to do now is to restart the engines on Site 2 so that it can perform the initial replication. I could do this using SAP Control, but I'm going to do it in HANA Studio because I want to monitor the replication as it takes place. This replication could take several minutes. What I'm going to do is open up an X clock so that we can see the true elapsed time for the replication. But to relieve some of the monotony, I've arranged to borrow the Co-Innovation Lab's time machine so that we can travel in style through the replication process. Bear with me while I adjust some windows for a better view and make some final adjustments. Now I'll start the services. We'll check to see that they're up and running. The replication has already begun. Strap yourselves in. I'll see you on the other side. Oh, wow, that was exciting. Okay, everyone check yourselves for bumps and bruises. As you can see, the elapsed time for that replication was just under 8 minutes. Our replication is now complete and active across all nodes. I'm going to clean up these windows and go back into PuTTY and re-execute our SR state reports. There's no change on our primary site since we completed the registration, but on our secondary we should see that the mappings have now been added to the SR status. And there you have it. Okay, let's recap what just happened. We took two separate HANA clusters, used two commands to set up replication between them, and completely replicated our 3-node HANA system with 200 gigs of compressed data, and pulled it all off in under 10 minutes. Try that with Oracle RAC. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. I'm going to just log back into HANA Studio, and I'm going to connect to Site 1, which is being replicated as VLR data. This is the owner account of a schema that existed only on Site 1. The user itself does not exist or did not exist previously on Site 2. We can't log into Site 2 while it's in replication mode and do queries there. ODBC connections are not available. We can only get a diagnostic view. I'm going to go ahead and drill through the schema VLR data and drill down to one of the bigger tables in that schema with 880 some million rows, and just pull a quick aggregation up. This is a fairly large query that might take a few seconds. It's going to parse through 888 plus million rows, aggregate all of the distinct values, and create a quick bar chart. Okay, now back to the command line. I'm going to issue the command on Site 2 to do an SR takeover.
This will remove Site 2 from replication and make it its own primary. Once this command is completed, Site 2 will be up and operational faster than I can make a switch to Studio. It's done. Back to Studio. Refresh the connection for Site 2. You see the green ball. I'm in. The system's up and ready to go. We can see in the admin console that there's a ton more data, but in order to get access to the schema that I had before, I'll have to create a new connection for VLR data. Remember that Site 2, before replication, was a newly installed system. Neither the VLR data schema nor its user existed. I'm going to create the user's connection. If the user does not exist because he has not been replicated, this operation will fail. Our connection was successfully created, so the user exists. We'll open up his content tree, and there's his schema. We'll drill into the tables, and there's the same 4 tables. Let's see if the data is available for querying by opening up a data preview. And yes, it is. Now I want to jump over to the System Replication tab for Site 2 and just verify that the mappings have been cleaned up. The mappings are all cleared up. The system is up and operational. System rep successful. I'd like to thank you for watching my tutorial on SAP HANA Multinode System Replication.